Welcome to the Kill the Lion podcast. It's me, Cody Clark. We have a wonderful show for you today. Addison Binek is here, and we are going to talk to him. He's the director of Psycho Ape. He's directed a bunch of fun cult movies, and he's become a bit of a cult filmmaker. Like, people throw that term around a lot, but he is a real cult filmmaker. People adore him, and we want to talk to him about how he made that possible. By the way, if you want to make these shows possible, $2 per month, killthelionfilms.com. It helps us make more movies. It helps us make more podcasts. And now, Addison Binek. All right, Addison, good to have you on the show.
Thanks for inviting me, man.
All right, so the term cult filmmaker gets thrown around a lot, but it seems like you have a lot of people that really, really adore you. Where did this come from? It seems like it takes you by surprise a little bit, too. You just did the Indiegogo for Psycho Ape Part 2. It's still going on right now. You got 17 days left to give money. You've already raised $8,850 of your $10,000 goal in just a few short days, really. Are you floored? How are you feeling?
Yeah, it's still a little hard to comprehend because, a lot of this stuff, I do a lot of promotion online. Social media is a tool, that's the main tool that I use. I use Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. But, in my daily life, my daily routine to, pay for rent and pay for bills, it doesn't really come from filmmaking. It comes from just my day job of being a delivery driver, So it's a little strange. It's a little weird when I log on to the internet and it's like, oh man, we've got $8,000 just in imaginary funds. You know what I mean? Like, it will show up in my bank, but I'm not going to touch it for anything other than this movie. I'm not going to pay my rent with it. I'm not going to pay bills with it. So it is weird that, all this money is coming in for Psycho Ape 2, that people believe in Psycho Ape 2. It's just separate from what I consider my real life or my day to day. Eventually I will take it to screenings and I will take it to conventions and I will submit it to festivals and stuff. And, it's just that this kind of thing, I'm not rich off of doing this. It's just that, I know a lot of people enjoy Psycho Ape and I do make some money from it with, t-shirt sales and DVD sales and stuff. But, I still have to hustle and I still have to struggle doing this stuff.
Well, I would say of all of us, you've done the best as far as cultivating a fan base and people that, want to buy your movie and buy your shirts and all that. I know me and Greg, every time I see him, I'm like, man, Addison is so good at this. You've kind of I don't know if you've intentionally cracked the code, but you have a really good rhythm as far as putting yourself out there, putting your movies out there. And obviously the proof is in the pudding. Man, $8,850 in a few short days. It's incredible.
No, it is. Yeah, I know. I realize that it is. I don't really. It's because with social media, you can plug away at your thing however many times a day you want to. I try not to be overwhelming about it, but I'm raising the funds right now, so I have to post a couple of times a day. I'm also in several different horror movie groups and stuff like that. So I'll share the posts there. Greg actually put the movie on Night Flight Plus. So I know that we got a lot of people who then backtracked or at least looked me up, on IMDb or Googled me or something and added me on Facebook or started following me on Twitter. So because of Greg putting on Night Flight Plus, we did get some, trickle down from that. And then it's been on Amazon Prime for a couple of years now. So that's kind of above me. That's above us. So, I can attribute a lot of Psycho Ape's success to that. But also, I do go to Cinema Wasteland or Days of the Dead or Horror Hound and sell copies there. And I go to screenings in person whenever the movie is booked and I'll sell, a dozen copies after the screening and stuff. So I have to travel kind of outside of my, zone. I live in Michigan, but just this year alone, I've been to Atlanta, Georgia at a Days of the Dead selling copies there. I've been to Ohio selling copies at Cinema Wasteland. I was in Wisconsin selling copies, like at a screening. I've been to Illinois twice. So, when you're ping ponging around and you have all these screenings, you meet new people all the time. And, I always tell people, if you like the movie, follow me on social media. So they do. And so then now they're seeing that like, oh, a sequel is coming. And so they'll throw some money at that. That's kind of what I guess attribute it to is I go places, I try to, step out of my comfort zone and go to these screenings or book, screenings that it's a 50-50 shot whether or not people will even show up or not. I've played to a packed house and I've played to literally just the projectionist. And, those screenings suck, but I've done it. So I guess it's just, you have to just keep plugging away at it. Like even the brutal screenings where there's no one there, like those really do suck. But I know that that's just one bad one, and maybe the next one will be better, And I also, because of social media, because of Facebook and stuff, just because I had that one bad screening in person, maybe like it's some random city somewhere, that doesn't mean that it's an all around and overall failure, because I know that like, oh, there's still, tons of people who like the movie. You go on Letterboxd and there's all these reviews. So it's just that, I'm willing to risk it and, gamble on cities where like the movie has never played, or, theaters that like, well, okay, they play like midnight movies or cult films. They've never heard of Psycho Wait, but maybe they'll come out for this. And sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. But it's all just, I'm willing to do it because, like I said, during the day, I'm just a delivery driver. And, I'd like to not be a delivery driver my whole life. And so in order to do that, I just have to keep pumping away at this.
It's interesting because even though you're a delivery driver, at least you're out there. And like, I'll see you post on social media where somebody will like a t-shirt you're wearing of some horror movie, and you'll just give them a copy of one of your movies. And I think that's a really great thing.
I only recently started to do that because there was a long stretch where like it's the winter and I don't go to a lot of screenings during the winter because traveling during the winter sucks. And people don't come out to screenings or conventions when it's cold outside. So I kind of have to drum up some kind of interest when I'm not going to screenings or when I'm not going to conventions. So that's what I do is, I'll pick up some Taco Bell or I'll pick up like a pizza from somewhere. And if someone's like, hey, what horror movie is that? Or like, what is that? I'll tell them what it is. Like, oh, this is the Toxic Avenger. Like, do you like cheesy, low budget horror films? If this seems like something that might be up your alley, hey, I make cheesy, low budget horror films. So I look for that bridge. I look for that gap. And if anybody seems even remotely interested, I'll just go in the backseat of my car where I keep all my merchandise and I'll just give them a copy, because I know that I'm probably going to be back around that Taco Bell or that Pizza Hut again, just maybe even like tomorrow even. So I'll come back around and I'll ask like, hey, did you watch it? What'd you think? And they'll be like, oh yeah, like I invited like some people over, or oh yeah, I gave it to a friend of mine for them to watch too. So I just sort of try to create my own interest, sort of just low key grassroots, that way also it makes it more fun for me when I'm delivery driving. When I show back up at that Pizza Hut, it's like, well, now like we can talk about the movie, or we can talk about like, well, what else do you like? Have you ever seen this cheesy low budget horror film? Like that was my influence, So I try to make friends with the people that, work at these restaurants. So I'm not just some anonymous face picking up like tacos,
Yeah, and I think service industry people like I've worked in the service industry, and my girlfriend Chloe's worked in the service industry. Tend to be creative or kind of oddball types that like interesting movies, like stuff like that. So I think that's a great tip for anybody at home who may be a filmmaker themselves. Is like, there's always an opportunity to get your stuff out there. If you pound the pavement in some capacity, kind of like you do, Addison. Doors can open up for you, and you can build that kind of fan base, which we're all trying to build. We all want to do this for our actual money making. That's always the dream. I don't want to like be in some weird studio system where I have no control. I just want to make money doing the things that I love. And that should be everybody's goal, is not to be grabbed and plucked from obscurity and placed into some confining constraint. But, just if you can make money making the movies you love and have complete control, even if you're making it for a fraction of what you would in some studio system, that's the way to live for sure.
Yeah, because it's just we're doing this on such a low scale. There's very little money even involved in the productions that we make. And so, what you're hoping for is to have something that then takes off and gets attention or gets you a little bit of money so that you can funnel it into the next thing. And then maybe the next thing will be a little bit bigger. It's cracking that cycle of this should feed into this. That's why Psychowave has so much merchandise, is because it's become this thing that's bigger than Greg and I, where, there's t-shirts, there's toys, there's DVDs. And by selling all this stuff, VHS tapes now too, through Lunch Meat VHS, there may be these, dozen or so hardcore Psychowave fans that now want to collect every single bit of Psychowave memorabilia. So that's why they're totally like excited about a sequel, is because it's another thing to like add to their collection, another Psychowave movie, like great. Cause then we can make more, or even like trading cards. Like, I had trading cards that were created for me by this guy, Richard Parks, who like professionally makes trading cards. So, that's all been very strange too. And something that I was not accustomed to that, and I wasn't really prepared for it either, because it was when Psychowave was first coming out, all of a sudden people were offering like to create merchandise for me. And I just said yes to like just about everything. Like, oh yeah, shirts, fine, cool. Oh, trading cards, like sure, neat. And then like once this actual physical merchandise showed up, it was like, oh crap, like this is crazy. I wasn't expecting this. I'm a filmmaker. I just want to make the movie and put it on DVD or Blu-ray and get it out there. All that other stuff sort of just started like appearing. The toys, it was because like this guy actually creates these cool little toys based off of movies, and he was going to be at a screening that was being hosted by Severin Films, where Severin was doing a double feature. That they were doing this movie Wild Beasts, but they also booked Psychowave to go with it. So I met this guy who created these toys there. And so it just kind of, we linked up, and I was like, well, can you make some bloody banana toys and clean banana toys? Like, let's make some variants. And so it's all just been kind of lucky, I guess, really. It's just coincidence and stuff. Some of this stuff I haven't really sought out, like the trading cards. I didn't seek them out. They were made for me. And that's been very weird and very interesting, and almost hard to keep track of at certain points because there's just so much. And then like Lunch Meat reached out and they wanted to do a run of 50 Psychowave tapes. So it's really just, hustling your thing and making sure a lot of people know about it or see it, because if you just keep hustling it, enough people will pay attention. And especially if it's something that's like unique or weird, because you got to stand out. There's a lot of people that just make these movies that go straight to Tubi, but like nobody really hears about them because the filmmaker isn't out there promoting the movie themselves. Like that's something else that's kind of different as well. I am like the face and the voice of my movies, and a lot of people, they will sell their films to a distributor or license their movies to a distributor, and like that's the end of the road for them. Now you're just a Wild Eye releasing movie. Now you're just some anonymous film on Tubi or Amazon. Like a filmmaker has to go out there and, in my opinion, like do it themselves. You really have to sort of like you have to drive your film, and you have to have a social media presence. And some people like just aren't comfortable with that. Some people don't know how to do it. And I've just sort of taught myself how to do it over time, because I've been doing stuff for a couple of years now, and I also like used to do stuff with Trauma, and that sort of taught me a lot about like self promotion and advertisement is doing stuff with Trauma because I would go to conventions with them and volunteer with them and sell my stuff with them. So it's just kind of been taking what I've learned from that and applying it to Psycho Ape, and that's kind of what why Psycho Ape sort of blew up, I guess.
It also reminds me a little bit of the Kevin Smith school of promoting your films and getting it out there and kind of just building a fan base where, you are almost a cartoon character of yourself. You're the mascot for your own movies, which is a great way to do it. Is he somebody who's been an influence on your career?
Oh yeah, since the beginning, man. Like Clerks, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, Mallrats, Dogma. I had those movies on repeat when I was a teenager, growing up. Like you watch something like Clerks and you're like, I could do this. Like this seems very easy to do. All I need is like a funny script. And then with Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, it's like, that's one of the funniest like meta, parodies of Hollywood ever. And I loved those two movies growing up. And then Clerks 2 came out and it was like, wow, he's grown so much as a filmmaker. Plus he's willing to try something else too. And yeah, Kevin Smith is definitely up there in terms of one of the most influential filmmakers like ever for me.
Yeah, same here for sure. Especially the Evening with Kevin Smith DVDs, watching those growing up, those were just so educational and just so fun and just made me think entirely differently on what a director or a filmmaker can be. That you can really be like an ambassador for something. You can really be out there with the people. And I do it to some small extent, but when I see how you're doing it, it kind of makes me realize like, wow, I could definitely be way more out there and more of a champion of the kind of stuff I'm making than I am. I've had small versions of cult success, like Ramekin really took off on Amazon, which is interesting because it was made for $500, but anybody who saw it on Amazon just kind of assumed it was, a couple 100,000 or whatever. So I have people who, for some reason, think like I spent a lot of money making that movie, or I had some studio that I pitched it to or something, because they just see it on Amazon. They're just like, oh, it's like anything else on there. It's just so always so interesting because budget is so relative. Like it's, you're raising, it looks like you're probably going to reach your 10,000, fingers crossed. You're making a movie for $10,000, but anybody who likes it, it's priceless. There's no amount of money that it cost or whatever.
Plus, they're not going to think like, oh, I wonder how much money was spent on this. That's not usually where like people's brains go. Filmmakers, yes, like other filmmakers are going to ponder, well, what did they spend on this and what did they spend the money on? Like that's a filmmaker thing, but most audiences, they don't really think about that and they don't really care. It's more, I think, if you're a fan of these kind of like really micro budget indie movies, they just want to have a good time, like they just want to be entertained. And that's really all they think about. They don't think about the money.
Yeah, because, the money, especially like if somebody likes something, they just assume a lot of money was spent. And if somebody doesn't like something, they're just like, oh, you must have had no money to make that. And it's totally not true. There's so many great movies like Psycho Ape and like some of my stuff and a lot of people's stuff that are made for like literal peanuts and, are just so much more fun than movies that had, like there's so many like weird like movies that'll come out that are made for like $5 million that just disappear and nobody ever thinks about again. And it's like, man, that's like for us, that's like a franchise. That's a everything.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone to see movies in theaters, and it's like these are those like Fox Searchlight indie pictures or something like that. These movies that a lot of money must have been spent on them, but they're very, there's not much to them. Or you watch them once, and it's like, well, I'm not going to go buy the T-shirt for that. I'm not going to even buy this on DVD when it comes out. But that, yeah, millions of dollars was probably spent on it for just some thing that is never going to be watched again, especially not going to have a cult fan base.
Yeah, it's basically instant garbage.
Or just it's disposable. It's fluff, it's filler, it's something that you watch with some popcorn at the theater and then you never think about it ever again.
Yeah, I like movies that get under your skin and get into your brain and you will never stop thinking about. Even movies I don't like. Like I just want something that I'm going to take with me forever because I feel like I got my money's worth on it, even if I didn't like it. It's just like if I can constantly have that as a reference point in my head, whether it's positive or negative, it's like, wow, that's a part of me now.
At least it left a mark on you. Like it left something, something behind.
Exactly. It can be an example of what to do or what not to do or something I like or something I don't like. It becomes my reference point in some capacity.
What I see a lot too and I talk about this with like other filmmakers is where if a trend kicks off, then all of a sudden there's like 10 of those things that are like shark movies or Amityville movies, or now, like right now, is like the drug animal movies. But a lot of times, those movies are so you can tell what they are. They are like bandwagon films. They're not going to have anything to them. They're cash grabs, and that kind of stuff doesn't appeal to me whatsoever. But I see it working for some people. Like they might make a bunch of money up front. But then in a year or two's time, those movies will be entirely forgotten because that trend will be over.
Yeah, that's one of the most depressing aspects to me of low budget filmmaking is the kind of charlatan filmmakers, which that's what I call them. I'm not saying you're calling them, but I'll outright call it that.
Yeah, I'm saying they're trend. They follow trends, and yeah, I don't like it either. It's very lazy and it's very just kind of. Yeah, you might make a bunch of money right now. Like you might raise $10,000 in an Indiegogo or a Kickstarter right now. But then in a year or two, when Cocaine Bear is way out of like the zeitgeist of film, because I mean the movie came out in February and it's already on DVD and Blu-ray. Like no one talks about it anymore because it's gone. It's done. It's over. But like right now we're getting like Cocaine Cougar and Cocaine Shark, and it's like the trend is already over. It's done. Like no one cares about this anymore.
Yeah, with those movies, it seems like they're selling a piece of DVD art, basically. Like, because when I was doing research for No Shark, I watched a ton of these really bad shark movies, and I went in with an open mind. I just wanted to know what was out there. I felt like I needed to become somewhat of an expert in what I was attempting to do, even if I was going in a different direction. But like you'd buy like these movies and the DVD cover looks great. A lot of these come out of Wild Eye or wherever else. DVD cover is spectacular because everybody has Photoshop and most people know what they're doing. And then you pop in the movie and it's just total Z grade, like not even Z grade in a fun way, just Z grade in an obligatory way. It's like, let's get to the 70-minute mark and who cares how we get there? It's just, it's a shame because low budget film can be so passionate. And when you see movies that don't have that passion, that are basically they're trying to sell you a lemon, they're trying to sell you like a piece of like.
Oh, yeah, it's a product. It's all it is. It's something that will end up in a Walmart bin that somebody will buy for like a couple bucks. And it's something that like, yeah, it'll be instantly forgettable and adds nothing to anything, really. I'm a sucker for these Z grade shark movies myself. I mean, I will buy the newest thing. Like, maybe I'm part of the problem, but it's not because I really like enjoy these films individually for like any particular reason. It's just like I see them as like riffing content for the future, maybe, or just stupid entertainment at 2 a.m. or something like that. But there's nothing to them, like they don't really matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's like one or two, like every couple years, there'll be like one that's like actually pretty enjoyable in an odd way. Like I liked Alien Shark. I don't know if you saw that one yet.
No.
That one I really liked because it did things within it that were just so bizarre that like they had to be passionate. Like you couldn't be that bizarre and lazy. Like it was it was bizarre in a let's entertain ourselves while we're making this kind of obligatory movie. So I liked that one, but like for every one of those, there's 10 others that are just like there's just no passion whatsoever.
Yeah, they these things are created just to get dumped onto some streaming site or for another thing for, Wild Eyes catalog. Well, that's what's going on right now is, I mean, just the other day, I ordered some crappy shark movies, and I know exactly what I'm ordering. It's like Jurassic Shark 3. It's Puppet Shark.
Did you get Doll Shark?
Yeah, that was the other one, Doll Shark. But yeah, I don't know. It's not because I think they're going to be any good. It's just riffing fodder for later, like that's really all it is.
And I'm always curious. Like I always want to be surprised. I always want to be going in like, all right, let's try. Let's see if this is going to be anything. I try not to have any preconceived notions when I put on a film because I don't think it does anybody any good. So there are some good ones out there. I'm actually like I'm hoping Puppet Shark is good and I'm hoping Doll Shark is good because you never know. You never know.
Puppet Shark seems like it could be interesting at the very least, considering the entire movie is done with like felt puppets, like Sesame Street.
Exactly.
So that seems like, okay, in order to do that, I mean, that's a complicated production. It's not just like, let's get some people on a boat and throw in some like CGI sharks. No, they had to like create these puppets. That takes effort and that takes passion. So we'll see.
It would be very, very hard to do a passionless puppet movie.
I would think so, yeah. I mean,
it's so much work that you just would have to love it.
You can't just, sleepwalk your way through a movie with puppets, It takes a little bit of effort to do something like that, and hopefully it pays off.
So I think part of your appeal, by the way, is you watch Psycho Ape, and there's no way this isn't a passionate project, and there's no way this isn't stuff that makes the filmmakers genuinely laugh and all that. I think that's all people ask really when they put on a movie is like, I want to know that the people that made this liked it, like, and that's the case with Psycho Ape, where like there's just no way in hell the type of jokes that are in there aren't entertaining and tickling you and Greg and Kansas and Bill. And people just want to be a part of that party. They just want to get the joke and they want to laugh their way into the conversation and all that. And I think it's one of the most entertaining movies of that type that I've seen in the last 10 or 20 years. So I'm definitely excited for the second one. I'm also not just saying that because I'm in Psycho Ape for like 2 seconds, but it's a really good movie. And it's also how I met Bill Whedon. And I owe that to you because I came on set and I met Bill, who I kind of knew in like I knew of him, but I'd never really properly met him. And then he ended up being in Ramekin 2 and No Shark, and he's just a pleasure. Him and Dolores are just the best. And let's talk a little bit about Bill Whedon. How did he kind of come on your radar and be somebody that you were interested in for Psycho Ape?
I've been a Trauma fan, basically my whole life. So I've always known of Bill because of the movie Sergeant Kabuki Man, NYPD. He plays the lead villain in that movie, and there was going to be a screening of the film in New York in like April or May of 2019. And I was also flown in as a guest because my first episode of Tramasterpiece Theater, which is like Mystery Science Theater meets Trauma, was booked as a double bill with Sergeant Kabuki Man. So Bill and I were the guests of honor for this particular screening, and that was the first time I was ever meeting Bill. But we hit it off really well. They showed Kabuki Man, I think first, I don't remember now, but then they showed Tramasterpiece, and throughout the movie, throughout Tramasterpiece, Bill would get up and leave and come back and get up and leave and come back. And so I thought maybe he wasn't into it, like the whole like riffing thing wasn't his vibe, or he didn't necessarily even find our jokes that funny, because we were riffing the movie The Battle of Love's Return, which is Lloyd Kaufman's first movie he ever made in 1971 when he was 25. So this is like a full, 15 years before Trauma was even a thing. So it's a particularly bad movie, and Lloyd would be the first to admit it. So he let us do that for our first episode of Tramasterpiece Theater. We tried our best, it was a tough movie to riff, and we just went with it and did what we could. And so I thought maybe Bill wasn't into it. He didn't think it was funny. But so I go out in the lobby after the movie, and he said that he did like it. He thought our riffing was funny, but he just couldn't tolerate the movie for that long. Him even knowing Lloyd, having worked with Lloyd a couple of times in different movies, he couldn't stand the Battle of Love's Return. And so, it was a sigh of relief that it wasn't us that was like, turning him off or anything. Like it wasn't our riffing that was bad. It was just the Battle of Love's Return, to the average movie watcher is a tough sit, even with riffs. But so he told me that, he still liked the riffing. And if there was anything in the future that he could have a cameo in, like if we were going to be back in the New York area later, he would be very interested in participating in it. So I told him, like, well, we're writing right now Psycho Ape. And I explained to him what it was. Killer gorilla escapes from the zoo. It's kind of like Halloween. And we have a big climax at the end that's going to take place in Times Square. But that's all we had, really. And so I fly back home to Michigan. I tell Greg that, like, well, I met Bill Whedon, and he said that he'd be down for a cameo if we go back to New York and, like, hit him up. And so Greg suggested that we cast him as our psychiatrist character. Like, I don't even know if we had a name yet. Like, I don't know if he was Dr. Zoomis yet. But he suggested we cast him just as that Dr. Loomis type psychiatrist character. And so I called up Bill and offered him the role, and he took it. So we were kind of off and running from there. And like with Bill on board now we could sort of make it a little bit zanier and a little bit weirder and sort of build the character around Bill and, knowing what we knew about him and the fact that, he is down to basically do just about anything on camera that you ask. He's a very open person, and he loves to improvise, and he even wrote that rap, like the rap that he has in the movie in the beginning. Like he wrote that's his.
Yeah, he's above and beyond one of my favorite people that I've ever worked with. And I heard he was kind of like pushing for Psycho Ape 2 for a while.
Yeah, he wanted to do it almost as soon as the first one was out. But I mean, you can't really do a sequel to something immediately, in my opinion. You have to wait like 2 years or 5 years or however long. You have to let the fan base grow, because if you make a sequel to something immediately, the only people you're making that sequel for are for the people who like backed the first movie and are now receiving copies of it. You have to let other people find the movie, and that's not going to happen overnight. You have to let it sort of gestate. You have to do what I've been doing and promote the shit out of it and go to conventions and go to screenings and sell copies. Because initially we had, 200 people or so for the first Kickstarter. And it's like, okay, well, let's wait until we have 600 or 1,000 people who know about Psycho Ape. Then let's do a part 2. Like, don't do it immediately because the audience isn't there yet. And so, yeah, he wanted to do it immediately. And I wasn't interested in doing it that soon.
Well, I and many, many people can't wait for the sequel. I think it's going to be wonderful. I think it's going to be even better than the first. As some sequels are, I think it's going to be even better than the first. All right, so we have a new segment that's on the show as of the last episode, which is, I used to work at a video store for many, many years. So one of the things that I used to do at a video store is I would prescribe movies to people that came in and they just described some vague thing that they wanted out of a movie, and I would find the movie for them. It's going to be a little bit harder with you because you've seen a ton of movies, much like I have. But let's play that. What are you in the mood for right now? What are you feeling? Let's say you probably just got off of your shift, and you're a little tired. What are you looking for right now?
Let's see. I guess, my typical go-to really is just something that's fun, something that's funny, something that doesn't take itself seriously. And all it really wants to do is just entertain me. Something that's maybe even like an hour and change, 70 minutes, 80 minutes, something that doesn't go on for too long, doesn't outstay its welcome. Maybe something with horror elements to it. Not scary, but, low budget, cheap gore. And if it's this kind of movie, maybe like some occasional like gratuitous nudity just in there for fun. Like that's kind of my thing.
All right, so I have something for you. I kind of prepared you it in advance because I kind of figured you'd probably ask for something like that. It's called Deadly Discovery. It's from 1992. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Are you?
No, not at all.
All right, so that's a movie that was made by, kind of a bunch of nobodies, nobody you would ever know the name of, at least. And they made it in, I believe, I'm checking right now. Yeah, they made it in Greensburg, Indiana. I think it's the only film that's ever been shot in Greensburg, Indiana, which is like a town of about 10,000 people. The way that I found this movie, I think I just stumbled upon it at like Book Off one day and grabbed it. But I went on Amazon to see, what it was like. Because like if I'm browsing in the store and I've never heard something, I'll just see on Amazon like what the reviews are like. There's this great Amazon review of it that calls it an unintentional comedy classic. And it's written by somebody from Greensburg, Indiana. And it's just talking about how like they basically know everybody, relatives that were in this movie. And they're talking about it in this very personal way. And I agree, it is an unintentional comedy classic. It is prime for riffing. It's basically, it's one of those movies where like a cop is involved in some shooting and is forced by the force to like take a vacation. And then he goes back to a small town and then he discovers like all these bad things that are going on in the small town that he has to help with. And that's the deadly discovery, basically, as he goes back home to a small town and finds crime that he needs to take care of in like a vigilante way or something. I love this movie. To me, it's the movie that Mystery Science Theater forgot and somehow missed, because it is the exact pace of like a great classic Mystery Science Theater movie where you can just hear the riffs in your head as you're watching it. So I think it would appeal to you in that regard. So I highly recommend Deadly Discovery. There is gratuitous nudity. You will never be scared in the movie. So it doesn't have a horror element, but I think it appeals to your sensibilities in other ways for sure. So Deadly Discovery from 1992. That is my my prescription for you on this evening.
All right. I'm actually in the process of plugging it into IMDb so that I don't forget it. And I'd like to just look it up a little bit and get an idea of what it is, because I've never heard of it before. And it must have been just straight to video, if...
Oh, very much so. Very much so.
Yeah.
Yes, I endorse it. It is a lot of fun. Usually these kind of movies, you throw them on and like everybody's just kind of like, get this off. Like, what is this? But it is a fun movie in that you start yelling at it and you start making fun of it if you're watching it with friends. And it works in that regard for sure. So Deadly Discovery, 1992. All right, our next segment. If you've heard the show before, you know what's coming. It's stupid questions time. Can I ask you some stupid questions, Addison?
Sure.
All right. First stupid question. All right. So when you were a kid, did your parents ever say to you, "Hey, Addison, if you don't clean up your room, I'm going to subtract a son"?
No, can't say that they did.
No? Okay. That's the first stupid question.
Okay.
All right. Second stupid question. What type of vacuum cleaner did Addison get for his birthday?
I never got a vacuum cleaner for my birthday.
A Dyson.
Okay.
Addison got a Dyson for his birthday. That's the vacuum cleaner he got. All right, next stupid question. What's the best ape movie?
Like personal preference or...
Personal preference, yeah.
I mean, I guess I just got to give it to the original King Kong.
I do too.
Can't beat it, man. That stop motion, better than any CGI that Peter Jackson thought he could do. I don't know. There's more ape in Psycho Ape than I think like all of Peter Jackson's 3 hours of that King Kong remake. It's just ridiculous.
I will give him some credit in that I really like the T-Rex fight.
I mean, that's fun. it's still not better than like a claymation King Kong fighting a claymation T-Rex and shoving a tree in its mouth, you know? Like that's one of the coolest fight scenes of like any monster movie, you know? Like I remember watching that as a kid and just being astonished at what I was looking at, you know? Like how do they do this? Like this is awesome. And then I remember seeing like Peter Jackson's version, and I think the director's cut, it's like 90 minutes before King Kong even shows up. Like that's almost the entire length of the original movie. Like that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that T-Rex fight in the original is still brutal. Even if it's claymation, it's so brutal a fight.
Yeah, because I mean, they have he breaks the T-Rex's jaw, and like blood trickles from its mandibles, and to have someone animate like blood trickling in a movie in 1933, it's kind of insane.
Yeah, it's one of those movies too. By the way, if you've never seen it big, if you've never seen it on a big screen,
no, I've never had the pleasure.
oh my God, I thought I loved it before. When I saw it on a big screen and you look up at it, you realize like, oh, this is a movie you're meant to look up at. Like it's every bit of framing in that film to look up at it, especially the opening titles. Oh man, is it gorgeous?
I bet. I mean, I'm sure the close-ups of King Kong, like when he's first coming out of the jungle, and it's a close-up of like that face, emerging from behind these trees, about to grab Fay Ray. I'm sure that looks awesome.
All right, next stupid question. What's the worst ape movie you've ever seen? Because I know you probably did a bunch of research before you did Psycho Ape.
That's kind of a tough one because it's a toss-up between like we watched the movie Going Bananas with Dom DeLuise as like something to watch, something stupid to pluck from for Psycho Ape. So it's like that, or maybe like Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes is pretty awful. I had never seen it before, and like the only reason I watched it was like for homework for Psycho Ape, and I hated it. I thought it was so bad. We watched Kinky Kong, which I'm sure you can figure out what that is. That sucks too. So I mean, there's a lot of really crappy ape movies out there. We watched most of them in preparation for Psycho Ape, and so this time around, we're not doing that at all. I mean, we wrote the scripts, and it's very, very loose, outline for the sequel, but we're doing parodies of part twos, so we don't really need to watch any like crappy ape movies now in advance. It's more just like, what do you remember about the most famous part twos? That's what we're drawing from now. Like it's not quite the same writing style as the first one, but that's something that I'm actually kind of looking forward to more. It's just like, well, how can we, on a budget of $10,000, how can we do our best Dark Knight parody or our best Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 parody? So it's a little bit different, but for Psycho Ape 1, we definitely mined, tons of crappy ape movies. There's a lot out there.
Did you ever watch the MVP movies?
No, we didn't do that. We were doing more just like, not just crappy ones though. We were doing like the original Mighty Joe Young, and then like the one from 1998 with Charlize Theron. Like none of us had ever seen it before, and so we were just kind of checking off boxes.
I'm surprised Greg didn't make you watch MVP because it's a hockey playing monkey. I mean, that's right up Greg's alley.
Yeah, but I think the ones we were trying to watch had more like cultural significance to them. You know what I mean? Like Mighty Joe Young and.
Are you doubting the cultural significance of MVP?
No. I guess more if you were to make a reference to something, as we do in Psycho Ape, we kind of wanted people to get the reference. Like if we made references to MVP, I don't think our audience would have caught them.
I would have went wild for that.
I mean, we did have the moment in the movie where like Nancy Banana is rattling off a bunch of famous apes, and there's even some names, or a bunch of famous monkeys, and there's even some names in there that I didn't know, that like Bill was suggesting that we just kind of used to create a large list. So I mean, there are references to certain things that like even I don't get. It's fine. There's in a movie full of references to both obscure films and famous films and all kinds of monkey stuff. It was just kind of a throw it all in there and see what sticks. But MVP did not make the cut. All
right. Well, Addison, great talking to you. Thank you for coming on the show. And if you are listening at home, you want to see Psycho 8 Part 2, and you haven't donated yet, go over there on the Indiegogo, find Addison on social media, and give a little money so they can make the biggest Ape sequel possible.
Thank you, man.
All right. Take care, man. Talk to you soon.
Yeah. Thank you, man.
Thank you all for listening, and if you enjoyed the show, $2 per month at killthelinefilms.com. That's how you can support us. More podcasts, more movies. That's the best way for it to happen. Thank you all for listening. See you soon.